The Syrian Civil War continues to inflict unimaginable suffering upon innocent civilians. Recently, the town of Talbise in the Homs Governorate was shaken by a series of deadly airstrikes. These attacks, attributed to the Syrian government, resulted in the tragic loss of nearly 50 lives. Among the victims were 6 innocent children, their lives cut short in a conflict they never chose. The images emerging from Talbise are heart-wrenching, a stark reminder of the brutal reality of this war. Rescuers desperately searched through the rubble for survivors, while families mourned the loss of loved ones. The airstrikes on Talbise underscore the urgent need for a peaceful resolution to the Syrian conflict. The international community must come together to condemn these acts of violence and work towards a ceasefire. Every day that the war continues, more innocent lives are lost, and the hope for a brighter future for Syria diminishes. To understand the Syrian Civil War, one must delve into Bashar al-Assad's regime. Assad inherited the presidency from his father, Hafez al-Assad, in 2000. The Assad family has maintained an iron grip on power, suppressing dissent. Bashar al-Assad's rule began with promises of reform, however, these promises quickly faded. Opposition groups were stifled and human rights abuses were commonplace. In 2011, inspired by the Arab Spring, Syrians demanded democratic reforms. The Assad regime responded with brutal force, marking the beginning of the Syrian Civil War. The Assad regime's brutal response to the 2011 uprising echoes a dark chapter in Syrian history, the Hama massacre of 1982. Hafez al-Assad ordered a military assault on Hama to crush an uprising by the Muslim Brotherhood. The Syrian military, under Rifat al-Assad, bombarded Hama with artillery and tanks. Thousands of civilians were killed and neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. The massacre served as a stark warning to the Syrian people. Any challenge to the Assad regime would be met with swift and merciless brutality. Section 4. The unfolding crisis, humanitarian catastrophe in Syria. The Syrian Civil War has resulted in an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe. Millions of Syrians have been displaced from their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring countries or living in precarious conditions within Syria. The United Nations estimates that over 13 million people inside Syria are in need of humanitarian assistance. The conflict has had a devastating impact on Syria's infrastructure. Hospitals, schools, and essential services have been destroyed or severely damaged, leaving millions without access to basic necessities. The war has also taken a heavy toll on the Syrian economy, plunging millions into poverty. The Syrian people are facing a multitude of challenges, including food insecurity, lack of access to clean water and sanitation, and the spread of preventable diseases. The international community must step up its efforts to provide humanitarian aid and support to those affected by the conflict. Section 5. Setbacks in Idlib measles crisis deepens. Amidst the ongoing conflict, a measles outbreak in Idlib province has further compounded the suffering of the Syrian people. The outbreak, which began in early 2023, has affected thousands of children, particularly in areas with limited access to healthcare. The situation was made worse by reports of contaminated measles vaccinations. The National Coalition, the main opposition group in Syria, suspended the vaccination program in Idlib, after receiving reports of adverse reactions among children who had received the vaccine. The World Health Organization and UNICEF are working with local health authorities to investigate the reports of contaminated vaccines and to ensure the safety of future vaccination campaigns. The measles outbreak highlights the vulnerability of children in conflict zones and the urgent need for increased access to healthcare and essential services. Section 6. A global call to action. The need for peace and justice in Syria. The ongoing conflict in Syria demands a coordinated international response. The international community must work together to find a political solution that ends the violence and addresses the root causes of the conflict. Accountability for war crimes and crimes against humanity is essential to ensure justice for the victims of the Syrian conflict. Those responsible for atrocities, including the use of chemical weapons and attacks on civilians, must be held accountable for their actions. The Syrian people have endured unimaginable suffering for over a decade. It is time for the international community to live up to its responsibility to protect civilians, provide humanitarian assistance, and work towards a just and lasting peace in Syria. The future of Syria and the stability of the region depend on it.